Nathan Klein was the first patient to be treated for Parkinson's disease through a process called gene therapy. Matthew During, a co-founder or co-developer of gene therapy, stated that before he went through this treatment, he could barely hold a glass of water, and 4 years after, he can successfully ride a bicycle. Parkinson's disease is one of many diseases that can be used that use gene therapy as one of the treatments. Other ones include hemophilia, diabetes, and other kinds of cancers. But what is gene therapy? Gene therapy is a type of genetic engineering in which researchers can replace certain mutated genes for new genes in the DNA. Although researchers can improve millions of lives with this new treatment, a lot of dispute has to do with ethics of it and whether or not researchers should be able to mutate DNA. Another dispute has to do with the fact that gene therapy cannot completely cure it. My proposition is that genetic engineering is beneficial to many people suffering medical illnesses. First, gene therapy can treat diseases in the long run. They can allow for indirect donors and allow people to live closer to a normal life. First, gene therapy can treat diseases in the long run. Gene therapy is a long-term treatment in which targets many people resistant to standard medications, such as if they're allergic to it or if they're not seeing improvements in their conditions. Treatment for Parkinson's, something that Nathan Klein experienced, is a virus that is injected into part of the brain of people with Parkinson's that is overreactive and causes uncontrollable body movements. A lot of the treatment, people saw improvements in the first 3 months of their injection, and the New Scientist journal states that Parkinson's disease with this new gene therapy saw symptoms improve as much as 70%. 1 year after the treatment, the Web Medical Online Journal states that 9 out of 12 patients showed an average improvement of 37% based on their severity, and 5 patients out of 12 showed improvements of 40 to even 65% improvements. Klein quotes that with medications, he feels 80 to 90% better, and if nobody knew that he had Parkinson's, they probably wouldn't be able to tell. Second, gene therapy allows for indirect donors. This will help decrease the chances of passing on other diseases during treatment. Hemophilia is a disease in which when you cut yourself, it takes a long time for the blood to clot, which can have serious effects on internal bleeding and just a long time to heal, which can cause you to lose a lot of blood. Before gene therapy, researchers had to get direct donors and get the gene from direct donors and then insert it into the blood of people with hemophilia. And they realized that 70 to 90% of hemophiliacs treated with this were infected with HIV. With gene therapy, it allows scientists to take the gene and insert it into bacteria so that it can encode and transcribe to multiple genes, so they can use that, purify it, and then use it to cure, for treatment for hemophilia patients. Gene therapy also helps the process of transplants. A surgery will no longer need a person to donate a certain body part or a cell, but also it will allow the use of animals as well, and this can lead to faster surgical procedure instead of having to find a direct match for treatment. Third, gene therapy allows people a chance to live a normal life. Insulin, a good example of this is people with diabetes, and because they have diabetes, they have a lack of insulin, or their body can't produce as much insulin as they need to break down sugars. With gene therapy, insulin can be created and sold to people with diabetes, and this will help improve their lifestyle because they don't have to constantly focus on regulating their blood sugar. It will help them because, they'll still have to pay attention to it and eat certain dietary restrictions, but it will allow them to not have to worry about it as much. Gene therapy allows people, for instance, with Parkinson's, to be able to communicate better with people, be able to try to fit in and live a normal life. In conclusion, gene therapy is a big step in our medical field and our medical abilities, and it has many benefits for people with medical illnesses. For instance, it can treat diseases in the long run. It allows for indirect donors, and it can help people live a normal life. Thank you.
Are you going to give that to me now? All right. All right, you do state the claim pretty clearly. I like the introduction with the examples that you have. I do see a problem, though, because I'm just not sure what the controversy on this is. You say at one point that there's a dispute about ethical issues. Well, then that sounds like that's where the argument is, and there's not really much argument about whether or not gene therapy will be able to produce these kinds of advantages that you're talking about. It's basically an informative speech on what the potential benefits are of gene therapy. Is there anybody who denies that these are potential benefits? Then we'd have a controversy. Or that these benefits are closer or they're being held up by something. That's the kind of thing that I think you need to have in the argument. And the only thing that I get is a vague reference to an ethical conflict, and you don't really provide any proof or evidence that people are objecting to this. So I'm not quite sure why that would be a problem. Maybe there would be something about people worried about animals being used in this process, but I didn't, manipulation of DNA, if there are people who object to this, then there ought to be some information that you could include so that we can see that there's a controversy here. And that's, to me, the weakest part of the argument. On the other hand, it's very well organized and easy to follow. You're dependent on examples on the first and second point to make your point, although on the first example there was some statistical information that went along with the particular case that you're talking about. On the second point on hemophilia, I do think you need to have a clearer explanation about how HIV is involved in this and why that presents a problem for hemophiliacs and why their self-donations are dangerous. Look, if they've already got the infection and they're doing a self-donation, what difference does it make if they already have HIV? They're not going to get more HIV, are they? Or are they? Maybe that's the problem that's going on there. So I didn't think that part was very clearly explained. I do think that in the first point you cited your evidence much more clearly. The second and the third point, it was not as clearly cited, and generally there were a lot of inferences that were being made, especially on the third point, that I didn't hear any substantial evidence for. So you want to be more consistent about citing the information in the oral part of the presentation. I think you do a very nice job talking to the audience. You look at us, you build a lot of credibility, you sound confident when you're speaking, so that helps quite a bit. I don't know that it'll compensate enough for not having as much information as you need to have, but it's going to sell the point pretty effectively. All right, thank you.